Benoit, nice to meet you.
Me too.
I want to ask you the biggest question that when I saw a Ressence watch, the first thing that I couldn't understand was how did this come to you? How did the inspiration of creating a watch with using oil, like this is a new way of telling the time that we haven't seen before. How did the inspiration come to you? Where did it start?
Yeah. Well, where it starts, I think there are more influences, not one. And so it's basically, I would say, the background that I have is not watchmaking, so it's industrial design. So that's the first one. There is, of course, the concept on itself to say, okay, let's take a screen, like we all know, we all have screens, but then say, okay, but that's how information is displayed today. That's 21st century way of representing information. Let's make that mechanical.
Wow.
See, because the screen is very good. It's very good because it's two-dimensional. So from a reading legibility perspective, it's very efficient. It's like a print on paper.
Yeah.
See, but on top of that, it's active, so you can change the information, what you cannot on paper.
Yeah.
So how do we apply that to a watch? And that's how Ressence, the concept of Ressence came. So to say, let's make it flat because it's easy to read, but also let's make it active because it needs to change, because otherwise it gives the same time all the time. So this is a very interesting, I think, element to put in the equation so that you understand where it comes from. And then there was also the idea that the person that wears the watch is the most important aspect of it. So because a watch, let's not forget, a watch is really about telling the time. We sometimes forget it in the industry, that the real function of a watch is to tell the time. Some will say something else, and I'm fine with it. Don't get me wrong. But when you ask a designer will always try to think about the functionality first, because the functionality will give relevance to the product. If a product is functional, it's relevant. If it's not functional, it's obsolete. Voilà. So it's also that idea to say, okay, how can we make the watch as clearly readable as possible? The easiest way to do that is to maximize the surface on which you project the information. And that's why a Ressence dial is as big as the watch, basically.
And also you talked about, we were talking for like 5 minutes before, you were talking about how you thought about this, that if in a world where traditional watchmaking didn't exist, and you were, let's say, responsible of creating the first mechanical watch, how would you do it? So I want to hear that. I want to hear that again.
So if there was no watchmaking, let's say there is nothing, but there is one thing, and that is how to read the time with hands. Let's say that is your starting point, you cannot change. But then you say, well, with that system of displaying the time, please think of how a watch would look today.
If it was made for the first time.
For the first time. So there was no watchmaking, there was
reference.
only the system, but there's no watch. So how would it look like? How would it look like in the context of today? So 21st century, 2023, how does it look? So you have all the design elements, the world we live in, the design language that is used today is different than the design language that was used like 50 years ago. But most designs in watchmaking are still referring to what to the past.
Yeah.
Whereas we as a young brand, we really try to say, okay, we are a brand from today, and so we try to bring an answer of today to the world of fine watchmaking. It's our vision. I don't say the others are not right. We all have our way to look at it, of course. Huh?
Exactly. And also, I think this tackles a huge problem, not a problem, but it tackles a new kind of a concept where you are, bringing that screen type of technology into a watch, into a mechanical watch. And the biggest problem with screens is that they become obsolete.
Yep.
Within 5 years, within 3 years, planned obsolescence, whatever you want to call it.
But that's it.
They don't last long.
Yeah.
But what you did is you took an old technology, but then took the modern kind of a display and fused them together.
Yep.
So this kind of brings me to a next question, which is that when you look at traditional watchmaking, everybody who studies traditional watchmaking, they come out of the school, the watchmakers, they kind of have a reference point on how to design a watch, right? Like that's the ABC. That's where it starts.
Right. It has a name, huh?
But with your with Ressence, it's kind of a new, never been done before concept. So what were the struggles that you faced in terms of finding the right people who can actually develop these, in terms of watchmakers, in terms of engineers, who can bring this concept into real life?
Yeah, there are quite some struggles, but I think that what helped me a lot is the machines that produce the components. They have evolved last 10 years, last 15 years tremendously. And they have become a lot more precise, and they have become because they changed the way they make the parts. Whereas, let's say when I started Ressence, the main dial part, so that's the minute dial, it was made. You can understand it. It's a block of titanium. They mill one side, they take it off the machine, they put it in another machine, and they mill the other side. And then it goes to a third machine that mills the ball bearing. So you can imagine that each step you have an error, a margin. And today the machines that are used to make the parts, the same parts, they take that same block of titanium, they mill the front, they mill the back, and they mill the outside, all in one operation.
Wow.
So they don't lose the reference points. So the precision of them is a lot better. And that allows us to make the designs that we make, because let's not forget, it's quite rare. Our watches are three-dimensional. And in nearly all the watchmaking, except a few independent brands, it's all 2D and a half. That means that all the axles are parallel to each other. And the bridges are also different layers, but all parallel. So it's very simple to understand. When you have to drill a hole, it's X, Y, and you drill. Simple. But if you have a curved surface, this axle goes there, this axle goes there.
Wow.
So you need to drill X, Y, Z on top, and then have an X, Y, Z on the bottom. You augment the number of reference points by 3.
Like it's not an isolated thing. Everything has to work in a sequence, basically.
Yes, and then of course everything is related because it's a mechanism. So if that doesn't work, that it will have influence. So the precision, I would say, is a very important one. There is, of course, the fluctuations in the market. It's also a challenge for us, smaller brands, because we suffer from it. Because the larger corporations, they order a lot of watches, and as they are big corporations, the suppliers, the subcontractors that we work with are the same as the ones that work with, or the larger corporations also work with these subcontractors. You can imagine that if a company, I will not say names, but big players in the market, they say, you make this for us, Benoit, you'll need to wait,
Yeah.
So it's that's really a challenge to find suppliers that are standing ground against this pressure they get to say, no, I have an order from Ressence, I will first do that and then I will do yours. It's not obvious to have them, I would say. So we suffer from that. So I think this is for us, Ressence, that's our biggest challenge, to make sure that we can supply enough at the right tempo.
I think this is one of the things that a lot of people, including myself, we never may have thought about, is sometimes the wait time for a watch is not necessarily intentional thing by the brand for marketing purpose. It's also about the demand of, and supply of different group structure, different brands, and their strength in and their ability to order things and getting them on time.
It's about certain parts and very simple things. Turning operation, a screw, very simple part. It takes four times more time than a year ago to make that same part today. You count in months. In months, it's super long. There is no capacity, and the reason is that the machines cannot be produced as fast. The machines that make these parts, the companies that make these machines, they cannot supply the machines in time. So it's a whole chain that is disrupted, and it started after the COVID. The disruption started, and we still feel it. There are some signs it will get better, but we still suffer from it. And as a young company, I want to be a good supplier, So sometimes I'm a bit disappointed that I can be a better supplier. So if you tell me what's the challenge, that's a real one.
Wow, never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because that's not the sexy stories they want to tell you,
Yeah. All right. 10 years from now, 20 years from now, what is the direction that you would want to take without revealing too much? Where would you want your brand to go? What kind of, maybe in terms of complications, in terms of style, what is it more that you would want to explore with Ressence?
Well, I would like to go further in the direction that we have chosen, with the strength and the assurance of what we have done. And because when you start, you don't know, you're not so sure about, okay, will the market accept my vision? It's not obvious. We don't have a crystal ball that tells us, okay, this is going to work. So in the beginning, you're trying different things. And a good expression of our self-confidence is this watch, I think. The reason is we can do this type of color now. And I think 10 years ago, I would not have done it because I didn't feel reassured that we could already do these type of things. Because at that point, I thought I need to show that I'm a serious company. So I cannot come with not serious colors, you see? And that's just an example. But to answer your question more precisely, the direction that we want to go in is a more, to go even more in that direction of functionality, relationship to the watch, make sure that you have a good feeling every day you wear the watch. It seems obvious, but it's not. It's not so simple to make sure that every day, and you need to think up front, okay, this person is going to wear that watch every day. After 1 year, he still needs to be as happy as the first time. How do you make sure it's like that? And it comes from many, many things. It's not one thing, or it's not because it's light. It's not because it's beautiful. It's many different things. And it's experience by doing it and getting the feedback from the market, from my clients, that I understand what they like, what they don't, what are the good choices, what are the less good choices, and so to grow the brand towards this stronger experience that we can offer with our products.
A lot of things, we look at this watch, we look at this, and wow, it's a nice concept, but a lot of times we don't know, behind the scenes
where it comes from.
What struggles that you might be, going through and things like that. So thanks a lot for sharing.